Somaliland's frankincense trade, challenges, choices, and sustainability. Next slide. So as a researcher, I began working here in Somaliland 6 years ago. And at that time, I came to do an analysis of the supply chain. As I understand, many of you are business students, and so you understand what a supply chain is. Well, we came 6 years ago and started to identify where does frankincense come from and how does it get to the West? Well, where does it go? I'm still focused on that. I'm still looking at the supply chain. And at that time, we recognized that there was an issue with a fair price being paid to Somaliland harvesters. So I've been very concerned with the issue of fair price to harvesters and landowners, and also in developing international markets for the resins. The last 2 trips that I've been on in Senag and in Arigavo and the Almadao have been focusing on tree health and the overall forest range of the frankincense trees in the Almadao. This is a map of 10 locations that my team and I have visited in the last 2 trips. So over a period of 2 months, we have just in the last week hiked over 50 kilometers up and down the mountains. The men did not think I would be able to make it, so they were very impressed that I was able to hike through the mountains. It's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful place that it was easy to hike there to see the frankincense trees. But this gives you an idea of how extensive a field work we've already done. This is the first time that we know of that foreign researchers have been able to visit this many locations and to collect information from communities and harvesters in their communities directly at the trees. So I feel very privileged to be able to do this work. The reason why I'm not naming the locations is for protection of some of the areas that we'll talk about as the presentation goes. Next slide. So how am I collecting data? How am I collecting information? Right? As a doctor, we're always looking at asking questions and doing research, and we're always supposed to tell you our methods. You're supposed to know how I'm collecting this information. So I have been interviewing people in the government, in the businesses, that's the exporting businesses, as well as the international companies that buy the resins and oils. I've been talking to the multilaterals like USAID, but most importantly, I've been talking with the chiefs and the elders of Senag region, the landowners, the people who own the trees and the land, and the communities that depend on the frankincense trade for their livelihoods. As some of you might already know, in certain parts of Senag, this is the most important economic asset that the region has. So these are the groups that we've been interviewing. We've interviewed well over 200 people, and we're continuing those interviews. They will be ongoing. Next slide. Here's me working. This was after hiking about 15, maybe 12 kilometers. We were pretty tired, and we started to debate the health of the trees. We got into some very intense conversations here. So I definitely leave the university and I go out into the field to work with people directly where they work and live. I don't expect them to come to me. Next slide. This is a meeting at a warehouse in Arigavo. This is CEO of Asli Mehdi, one of the largest exporting company now. Over the last 5 years, this company has absolutely dominated the market and is now the largest exporter of resins from Somaliland to the UK. And next to him is a landowner who has quite a lot of land. This is at a warehouse in Arigavo. So, for you business people, in 2010, I did a first supply chain analysis. And I want to walk you through this. So, can I move? Can I move? Okay. So in 2010, when I first looked at the supply chain, we started with the Somali landowners. We witnessed the resins moving from the landowners into sorting houses in Aragabo, where women only would sort the resins and separate out the bark. At that time, Somali middlemen would then move the resin through Yemen and into Saudi Arabia and into the Arab markets. And at that time, the dominant resin that was being traded was Métis, or Fariana. Boswellia fariana is the scientific name. Most of you probably know it as Métis. That Métis, bought in the Arab markets and used in the Arab markets, was also exported to the European Union, the United States, and to Chinese markets to be used as resins and also distilled into oils and then sold retail to the final consumers. Okay, this is 2010. Next slide. So 6 years later, I've come back to a drastically different supply chain. In a very short period of time, there's been a big change in the market. So we have Somali landowners that are selling their resins through exporting companies' middlemen to sorting houses to be sorted no longer in Aragabo, a little bit, but mostly now here in Burao. That's a big change. The bark that is separated now is sold on to Ethiopia. And the reason why there's a demand in Ethiopia for the bark is because Ethiopia has a serious problem with having over-harvested their Boswellia species, and they have a decline in quality resins. So if you mix bark from very high-quality trees in Somaliland with lower quality resin in Ethiopia, it smells better. It makes a better incense. So that's a new market. The other thing that's happening now is that we have resins coming in from Puntland. Okay? We have resins coming in from Puntland. These are Boswellia carteri resins, mainly, that come in from Puntland and are shipped out of Berbera as Somaliland resins. But in fact, they come from Puntland. I'm not getting into a political discussion about the boundaries or the countries. I'm just stating a fact that we have resins moving from the Puntland region, from the Horn of Africa, through Somaliland and out of Berbera. Okay. What we have also happening now is major resin buyers and exporters are selling their resin, or bringing their resins to their own distilleries that they own outside of Somaliland. So these distilleries in the United Kingdom, in the UAE, and the United States are buying oils, buying resins with their own middlemen, shipping it out of Berbera and distilling it internationally. There is one distillery that's been constructed in Hargeisa. One distillery. That company is Neobotanica, and it is not online yet, but it is constructed. We have visited. These resins and these oils are sold in the European markets, in the United States and in China, at very high demand now. There's been a very rapid increase in demand for carteri resins, for Bayo. There's been a very, very fast increase in demand for these resins. So in the last 5 years, the market has changed due to high demand and due to competition between new exporting companies. Frankincense carteri oil is considered the king of essential oils. It is one of the most highly prized essential oils in the world. what are the economic changes? There's a change in the supply chain. You know there's going to be changes in economics. Well, in 2010, the average price of 1 kilo of Carteri resin was $1. In 2016, the average price is $6. And it should be much higher. We're going to talk about that. In fact, people who take care of their trees should be making at least triple this on a kilo of resin. In 2010, we had a problem of landowners underbidding each other, not working together in a cooperative to keep the prices up, but actually hurting each other by underbidding each other to try to move the resins because there was not enough demand. Now, you have exporting companies in heavy competition for a very limited supply of high-grade resins. There's only so much the trees can deliver every year. So it's not an endless supply. There's only so much the trees can actually give. And so there's a lot of demand now. Low demand in 2010, high demand in 2016. Remember, I'm talking about Bayo. I'm really focused on Bayo right now. Most of the export in 2010 was Made going into the Arab markets. Now, most of the exportation is for distillation into essential oils for Bayo. So it's a change in which species is more prized. The last analysis that was done by FAO in 1987 estimated that there were about 200 tons of Bayo, of Boswellia carteri. Now, the production 800 and 1,200 tons of Bayo being exported out of Somaliland. It's a huge and drastic increase. Next slide. Here's a picture of some beautiful resins for those of you who haven't seen them before, but I'm sure most of you have. So, what am I finding on the ground when I go out into the Almado and I work in Snag with the communities? I want to share with you what we found. And it is controversial. And I do want you to ask me questions tonight because there's been a lot of misinformation about what my team and I are doing. And I want to clear that up tonight. So I'm very pleased the media is here. As we understand it, there's 42 major farms. Of course, there are smaller areas, but there's 42 major farms, which are essentially forested areas, growing Boswellia carteri or Boswellia